Greetings and welcome. This is Luke Smith, Rural Vacant Land. I run this little website called RuralVacantLand.com where I sell easy, cheap land. And in the course of trading land, I look at a lot of deeds and a lot of titles. And so that's what I'd like to talk about today is titling. I'm often asked what to title a property. Yeah, I'd like to buy a piece of land from you, but what title do I keep it in? And that's a very common question from somebody who's never bought a real asset before. A real asset being something that's got a name, a title, like a piece of property, a house, a car, a boat, an RV, something that's held in the name of someone or some entity. And so I wanted to go a little bit deeper, not just talk about title, but titling a piece of land and personal name versus using a trust. And before I get into this, I wanted to say that I'm just a land trader. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an expert in this field. This is just from my understandings of trading hundreds of properties that I've traded, and reading lots of titles and deeds and documents, and before that being in the financial industry, trading thousands of stocks in the same way, looking at titles and the paperwork of the titles. So with that kind of background, not an attorney, not a lawyer, not legal advice, seek some legal advice for your particular scenario, but just generically speaking, all covered with disclaimers there. Let's get into it. So people often ask me about using their name versus using trust or some entity, and came up today on a lady who was looking at buying property, and I thought I'd use that as an example to get into this topic. This particular example, the lady is single, and she's got kids that are not 18 years old or older. And I asked her about the age of the kids because I'm always offering people to give them a refund if they don't like the property, if there's something's wrong with it. I want to be able to give them their money back, and to be able to do that, I want to have a clean title that they can transfer it back to me. Like I can have them sign a deed and sign the property back over to me. But if they've got their name and their kid's name on there, and the kid's like 5 years old or something, they're not 18 or whatever age they have to be in the state they're in, they can't legally sign that property back over to me. It's not a clean transfer. In lots of states they can take it back. When they turn 18, they could say, I wasn't old enough, I didn't make a good decision, I was too young, my signature didn't count when I was that age, and I want my property back. And they can get it back. So I don't want to do refunds with somebody that's owning a property with their kids. And at the same time, it's not just self-fulfilling or self-gratifying or whatever. They can't transfer the property to somebody else. So if they change their mind, I bought the property from Luke at RuralVacantLand.com at half the market, I want to sell it to someone else for market price or more, and they're not selling a clean title when they do that if there's a kid on there. And so that's why I asked if this particular lady's got kids, if they're old enough to sign contracts and stuff. The neat thing about land is you can transfer it to somebody. They don't have to sign anything. It could be somebody that's not even born yet. If you know their name, if you know what the parents are going to name them, you can transfer them land. It can be an awesome gift. They can't do anything with it until they're old enough. They can't sell it, but that can be a good thing too. Can lock an asset up, and it can pass funds from one generation to the other, and you can get creative with values and stuff on the land when you do that, tax-wise and stuff. So name versus trust or other entity is the topic we're talking about. And so she was thinking just put it in the name, and or trust, what's the pros and cons of each. The pros of using a name is it's cheap and easy, and you already know your name and you know how to spell it, and it's easy to write it, and you can sign it. You don't have to think of what title to put after your signature, or what name of an entity, or set up an entity to do it, and you don't have to pay for some entity. And so I wanted to get into that. So if it's in her name and she passes on, the land should still transfer to the kids, but she's got to take it through probate process in whatever state and county she's in, and or the land is in. If you own 20 different properties in 20 different counties, you might be doing probate in 20 different counties to get that land transferred to the next generation, or to the spouse or the brother or whoever, the friend that should end up with that property after the person passes on. And that can be a costly and paper consuming endeavor to do that, and in this case it probably costs more than she's paying for the property. So we want to avoid that. Everyone wants to avoid that. You want to avoid the taxes and avoid the fees, and so that's where trust comes in. That's where trust starts becoming beneficial. If you buy the land from RuralVacantLand.com and you get to the title box, when you're entering your information to buy the property, and you don't know what to put in there, and you have a trust, usually you should put the trust in there, because the trust, it's got its own name. It's not your name. It's not your spouse's name. It's not your kid's name. It's not someone's name. It's an entity's name, and that entity can outlive a person. So as the person passes on or gets incapacitated or something happens to them, that entity should still be there, and it should keep going. It might be the Smith Family Trust, dated date, 1999 of whatever, you put a date on there when the trust was started, and you put that as the title. And then you have a document that's the trust. That's what, the rules and description, everything of the trust are in. That's the trust, and that's where you dictate what kids get what, or what people or what charities, churches, whoever you want to leave your assets to, gets what after you pass on. And you can act as trustee of that trust, and you can be basically the captain, the one driving the ship, and you can change the rules along the way, and use those assets, run those assets, manage those assets like they're yours until you pass on or get incapacitated. And that's where the trust starts laying out what happens after you. So a lot of people think trust, it's big, expensive, scary endeavor. It doesn't have to be. I've set up numerous ones by this website, and there's other websites to use as well. But this website, just because I'm familiar with it, is uslegalforms.com, and I use this website for deeds and contracts and all kinds of legal stuff. Other people like to use rocketlawyer.com. That they'll charge you by the document, or you can do a monthly fee. You can do a monthly fee on US Legal Forms too. You pay a monthly fee. It's like $30 a month on US Legal Forms, and you get all the documents you could ever use for, accessible. Rocket Lawyer's like $40 or something a month, and you get all the forms. And Rocket Lawyer, you answer the questions. You just answer questions to fill out the form. And they've got lawyers you can call on and people to refer to and all kinds of help. Another one is LegalZoom.com. And same idea. If you want to set up a lawyer, or a trust, a living trust, you do a living trust to figure out what their fees are. In my experience, I haven't checked, but LegalZoom's usually like twice the price of Rocket Lawyer. And US Legal's usually like half the price of Rocket Lawyer. But so hence I keep coming around to US Legal. And the other thing that I like about US Legal is the forms that it creates. Because I've read different contracts and forms from lots of these different providers, as well as hiring attorneys along the way for different things I've gotten into, is the ones that I get from US Legal Forms, in my experience, have been much easier to understand. It's not an attorney trying to give you a phone book of a contract to make you feel happy about paying them their fees. It covers the bases, and I can understand it as a layman. So that's why I keep coming back to US Legal. And so any one of these work, but for this example, I'm going to use the US Legal Forms. And so I'm going to go to family law in this case. Not family law, what am I talking about? Estate planning, because trusts are part of estate planning, And so I'm going to talk today about living trust because that's what I'm the most familiar with. There's all kinds of things you can get into, and this is an example. It's not the way to do it, but it's an example of what I'm familiar with. So living trust, and they get into descriptions and a lot of stuff you can read and learn. I'm in California, so I'm going to go to California. I pull up the Living Trust of California, and the first thing that comes up is the stuff that is the most, I believe it's the stuff that's bought the most, the things that, most, here we go, most frequently ordered. So I like that because I know it doesn't mean that everyone else is buying the same thing, that's the right thing to buy, but it's usually much more likely the right thing to buy for what kinds of stuff you're looking for, whether it's a deed for a different state or a option contract or a mortgage or a whatever kind of thing you're doing. So in this case, the first thing that comes up is a living trust for individual who is single, divorced, or widow or widower with children. And so today's example, a lady wanted to buy some property, she has kids, and she's not married. Kids, underage kids. So this trust is what I would, if I was in her shoes, I would be going down this path. And the nice thing that US Legal does, I mean, maybe the other websites do it, but I haven't experienced that, is that I can read the document before I buy it and before I start using it. They've got a free preview. They've got descriptions, and they talk about who would use this and why. There's related forms. Maybe you want something like this. You got close, but you want something like it. If you want to ask questions, you can ask questions, and they'll really help you with this stuff. They got great customer service in my experience with you talking to US legal people. So description, a lot of them are in the South with this really nice slow Southern accent. It's kind of a nice feeling to get someone like that on the phone. I don't know if you experience the same thing or not. That's just my experience. So the description, but I wanted to talk about the free preview. So the free preview of these documents, and I talk about US legal and a lot of different uses for them, but this trust is what we're talking about today. So I'm going to blow this up and as big as I can get it without jumping off the screen. This is a revocable living trust. And so if you buy this form from them, you get an editable form, and you can enter in, you can fill in the blanks. And by the time you go through here and read it all, fill in the blanks, you got to trust. That's it. You got to trust. It's that easy. And this revocable living trust is being made on this, a date. You can do a date, county, state, that kind of stuff. Really basic information. Name of the trust. So you name the trust, the Smith Revocable Living Trust, or the Smith Family Revocable Living Trust, is created in accordance with California Probate Code. You get a date on there, so you get the name plus the date. You get the name plus the dated date is what you put when you're buying assets. And then our identification, you're going to put the trustors in there. And if you're the one managing it and filling out the form, you're probably going to be the trustor, or the one that's the beneficiary of this. You're going to pass it on to who's going to basically the beneficiary of this trust. You're going to put the beneficiaries in there, and you can Google all these words and get more definitions of it. Who's a trustor, or trustee, beneficiary, these legal terms. You can search them and figure it out. Trustee is going to be the person running the trust. And see, I'm already mixing up trustor and trustee because I'm on the spot and the camera's running, right? But trustee is the one running the trust. Trustor is who gets the benefit of it, like your kids or your spouse or whoever you're leaving behind. You put the trustee in here, and one of the main things about a trust is you've got to have a successor trustee. And so if you pass on, if you're the trustee running this, the successor trustee is the one who picks up the reins and runs it after you. And so when I'm buying land and the trustee of the trust is passed on, I'm reading their trust to see who the successor trustee is. And so you've got to have a trust like this to give to people like me when you're trading your land or your other assets, to be able to convey those properties. And the other thing I'm looking at is the property I'm buying. When I'm buying property, I'm not always looking that it's listed in the trust as one of the assets, because that's, they don't usually list them all out. They usually own the assets in the name of the trust. Some trusts list them out, but we'll get to that. So here it's talking about the assets of the trust and Exhibit A, which is at the bottom. We'll go back. We'll scroll to the bottom. I'll show you the exhibit. It's got exhibits usually at the bottom. There's Schedule A. Well, the A, Schedule A, Exhibit A, same thing. Put the name of the trust in there, Schedule A. They got to have something in there to make it of legal tender. So they put this one line in there. I'd leave that alone, and then just list all other stuff like land, APN number, legal description, bought from RuralVacantLand.com, that kind of stuff. You put it in there, and then so you fill out the assets you're putting on there. You can put your clothes on there. You can put your TV, your computer, whatever you have, right? And so I went a little too far. Trustee, assets of the trust, additions to trust property. As you buy stuff along the way, it keeps adding on, whether it's listed in here or not. Rights to trust assets. There's a lot of stuff in here. I'm not going to get into all the details, but when I'm buying property and I'm reading title to buy a property, and I'm looking at it and I'm studying it and I'm trying to figure it out, make sure it's the person's property that's selling it to me, and they have the full authority to sell it to me before I pay them and buy the property from them. I'm asking and looking at the powers of the trust. And so I asked for the powers of the trust part of the trust, and this right here is Article 5, trustee powers and other provisions. Different trusts are worded differently. This one is the powers of the trust is this part of the trust. And it'll say whether the trustee, whoever I'm talking to, they better be a trustee, and they better be willing and able to sign, or else I'm not buying the property, right? So the trustee does hereby grant trustee all powers necessary to deal with it, blah, blah, blah. This person, the trustee that was listed up here, has the power and right to blah, 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 trust assets. Authorized and granted all powers necessary to retain, so they can work on assets, non-productive assets, investment securities. So when I was in securities business, we were always seeing if they can do puts and calls, and what kinds of securities can they margin it. It says margin, additional property. There's a sale and lease right here. The trustee is hereby granted all powers necessary to sell, convey, lease, transfer, exchange, grant options to purchase, otherwise dispose of any trust asset. So right there, someone that used this trust, who's a trustee, would have the power to execute. Here it goes even further, to execute and deliver deeds. So they can sell land, they can transfer the land that's in the name of this trust because of the wording that's here in this powers of the trust part. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm the most familiar with reading and looking at. There's lots of different things in here, distributions, and what can the trust do? And it goes on management of realty. The trustee is specifically authorized to deal with real estate and personality, including oil, gas, and other mineral rights, blah, 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 blah. The person that is the trustee and a signer on here can do it. And so I'm going to skip a lot of this other stuff that gets into more family business, like if someone gets hurt or whatever. And I'm going to go down to one of the other things that I look at a lot when I read trust to buy property is the signature page. I don't know this trust well enough to know where it is, but it's usually at the end. Oh, there we go. There's some signature page. Let's see if that's the signature page. Yeah, so you can get it signed and notarized, and when it's notarized you could get it recorded. So you could sign it without it being notarized and not being recorded, but if you get it notarized, then it's recordable. You can go get it recorded. So there's the trust store. They're calling them trust stores. I'm scratching my head. They're usually trustees, but oh, here, trust store and trustee have signed this agreement. Trust store. So you could title them as a trustee of the whatever you can call this trust, or trustor. So when the person signs, when they sign the deed of transferring the property from this trust to me, I'm looking at the signature page to see what their title is. And so when they sign it, they've got to have that title next to their name. So in this case, I would say, you know, the Smith family revocable trust, you know, John Smith signed here, you know, he signs it, trustor of the Smith family revocable trust. You know, you get the idea. So those are the kinds of things I'm looking for in a trust. But as a person buying land, I just wanted to point out how easy it is to go set up a trust for yourself. Now, the more complicated your life scenario, the more kids, the more marriages, the more layers of businesses and assets you add to the picture, the less and less likely this document covers everything. But I think this is a good starting document for people that are just starting out with their first trust. And as you get more detailed, more into it, I think it's a better idea to hire an attorney and cover the more complex scenarios that some people get into. But this is just one way you can break down the barriers of starting your own trust and be one of those top 1% of America that actually use a trust. Because most people don't, but I think they should. And when it comes to buying land, and cheap land like at RuralVacantLand.com, I think it's a good place to start. Start your first trust when you're buying your first land. And so I wanted to put that out there as a bit of an educational and hopefully inspirational piece of information that's not advice. It's not legal advice. It's just coming from Luke Smith, plain old land dealer. So hopefully you found that interesting and educational, and please feel free to ask questions. I can't give you legal advice, but I might be able to point you in some different directions that'll help. Luke Smith, RuralVacantLand.com. Thank you. Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching.